Welcome to NUFC Matters with me, Steve Wraith, and as always at the weekend, we like to get people from around the world on. So big welcome to a few of our regulars who have appeared on the show before: Al Walid, Andre, Nathan, and Adam. Great to see you, lads, and a big welcome to Graham Brewis, who is based in the northeast and is a first time caller on the show. So welcome to you, Graham, in particular, mate.
Thanks, Steve. Thank you.
Good to have you on. Straight into the questions. I can see a lot of questions, and I expected we would be busy today, lads. James Brown, he says, "Hi, Steve and guests. Is the Shopra Consortium takeover bid 100% real, or is it just paper talk? If it is real, do you think they'll be able to take the club forward? As I've never heard of them." Well, we're talking about this off air. Just trying to fill the lads in before we came on. It is real. It is genuine. And, you know, ultimately, I think it's an alternative if the PIF deal, PCP Rubens deal does collapse. But at the moment, I would say it's, you know, it is now probably a two-horse race with PIF well in front. But let's come to you, Graham, first, as it's your first time on the show. You know, what's been your view so far of what's happened over the last 7 days? You know, with the takeover supposedly coming to a halt. You know, fans writing to MPs, and you know, essentially a big tussle in the media, I suppose, when Keith Downey seemed to be in contact with everybody on either side, getting a little bit from Mike Ashley, getting a little bit from the Premier League, getting a bit from PCP. It all seemed to come to a big halt on Friday, and a lot to take in over the weekend.
Well, thanks for the invite to join you, Steve. I'm very grateful for that. I just wanted to share, and also it's like the other thing that I noticed when I asked to come on was that I'm probably a little bit older than some of you guys.
Yeah,
it doesn't get any better. The frustration and the wanting to the easing of the passion just doesn't happen. If anything, it increases as the years go by.
You certainly don't look any older than me, Graham. You look great.
That's very kind of you. But it's been another frustrating week. I didn't know about the chopper thing until this morning, and the slight input that I've had from you there. It just seems like I thought that the PIF thing, it's nearly, I keep hearing this phrase, dead in the water, and it seems to me that it's really down to the Saudi side of it to kick things off again. In that Premier League would think they've tied things up with that letter, which they probably copy and pasted and sent it to all the MPs, and for them it's business over. So I think it's in the Saudis. The chopper thing I wouldn't like to comment on, really, because I don't know enough about it. Although another one added to the American who's got no money, I think that's dead in the water. That seems to it. But this new one, chopper one, keeps the sort of interest alive.
Yeah, you're talking about Henry Morris, of course, where still no sign of Henry Morris. He still hasn't appeared, so I'm sure we'll see him at some point. Graham, I've got to ask you, we always ask people when they come on the show, what was your first match, Graham? Can you remember it?
Well, because I'm so old, I can't. But that's not to say that that's good. That's good and bad in the same sentence. And I've been to so many, I can't remember the first one. It would have been with me, my eldest brother, who's passed away. And I think it was a reserve match.
Right.
I can't remember, but I've done the distance. I was born in the West End. I can see, if I look out the window, I can see St James's Park on a clear day. I've got some magical moments with the team over the years. So I can't remember the first game. I remember the most memorable, though. The most memorable would be the semi-final, Hillsborough, the Malcolm McDonald, the second goal against Burnley in the FA Cup. That was the magic moment for me so far.
Fantastic. I can see Al Walid's getting jealous when he heard you describe looking out of your window and seeing St James's Park. He's desperate to get over here after COVID. Al Walid, welcome to you, mate. Good to have you on. Obviously, LW Newcastle. You do the, you did a Saudi Arabian Newcastle United show, and it's well watched and well received. How's it been for you in Saudi Arabia with what's gone on over the last 7 days?
Actually, I caught you, Steve, when you said it's a move on a big game of chess. I would say also it's like become now more like a poker game, maybe some cards being shown finally. After this amount of pressure we made, they say something. Finally, we found Richard Master is still alive, and I think the Premier League consortium sent indirect message through Shea Honora, the parliament member. I don't know why they didn't provide the statement straightforward. Why it's have to become by a letter, indirect way. I don't know why. PIF, as Keith Downey's source said, they give the Premier League consortium a proof and guarantee of separation between PIF and Saudi government from the highest entity in the country. I don't know why the Premier League consortium need more to believe. They should swear on the holy book, maybe. They want them to swear on the holy book. They did everything possible. Unfortunately, my conclusion, the Premier League consortium have a common interest. It will affect it if they prove the takeover, this particular Newcastle takeover. Because from the beginning, they're trying to pushing away this deal. And now, the question now about the disagreement, why now after 18 weeks we hear of this? This should be at the beginning of the takeover.
Yeah, I agree. I really do. I think it was interesting to see that the highest possible person in command in Kingdom of Saudi Arabia had written a letter to the Premier League, and that just seems to have been ignored, really. And do you have much faith? Do you have much hope, Al-Walid, that there could be a compromise?
I read your tweet today about compromise. I believe so, but the point is, does the Premier League want this deal to happen? This is the question. Because as you said before, at the beginning, earlier, maybe 3 weeks or 4 weeks ago, it's now the man who can save this is Mike Ashley himself.
Yeah, no, I agree. Sean Foreman's asking, do we think that Amanda and the Rubens would be interested in taking it forward, if this did collapse? My opinion's not changed on that. I just think this is the deal they want to get through at this moment in time. Of course, there's a possibility that might happen in the future. Andre, to you, my good friend in Bulgaria, good to see you again. And it's been a roller coaster week, hasn't it? It hasn't been plain sailing. We all hoped that we'd get some positive news after 17 weeks of waiting, but it's just turned into a nightmare scenario for us, and we're still waiting to see what happens.
Yeah, first of all, hello to fellow fans around the world. Yeah, it's the letter from the Premier League, and not only the letter, but the 17 weeks before. And what Al-Walid said, basically, I agree 100%. The Premier League basically didn't want the deal to happen, and they tried to make it as complicated as possible. And I think that this is why PIF, pulled out of the deal. Basically, they felt unwelcome. They felt that they're not wanted. And first of all, that's why the Premier League kept silent for 17 weeks. I read the letter by Richard Masters. They claim that this is their usual process and they have to go quiet about it, and they have the confidentiality rule and everything. But at the end of the day, there was a deal in place. It was submitted to the Premier League, and these guys for 70 weeks basically played back and forth with PIF and the PCP consortium on why the deal cannot go through. And all the challenges and the fact that they don't believe that it's PIF, but it's the Saudi state behind the deal, everything shows that the Premier League didn't want the deal to go through. And with the letter that Masters sent to Shea Honora, basically they admitted this. And from now on, honestly, I'm not a big optimist on what can change, because if the Premier League is against the deal, what should change in order for the Premier League to change their mind? If the Premier League wanted the deal to happen, they would have let it happen. From now on, I was very surprised to see this Michael Chopra and the new consortium. I also have never heard about them, but basically I didn't know much about PIF either before, and I don't think many people knew about Roman Abramovich or many people knew about Sheikh Mansour. So a lot of these people really come on the scene when they appear in the news and when their intentions come clear. But as we talked, it might take some time, and I don't think it's going to be that straightforward that a new consortium comes and they agree a deal with Ashley for like a short period of time, unless they have a lot of cash, a lot of money actually, and they pay the deposit and they can make all the arrangements and the deal can go through. But all in all, I'm disappointed with the Premier League, and honestly, like really, I feel bad about the whole thing, and I have this suspicion that it's not always not clear, and they are not. There are interests behind. I think that the Premier League is really not putting everything on the table. I don't think that they're very transparent with the Newcastle fans on why, in the first place, they were so much against the deal, and they went so much into detail on why the deal cannot go through.
Yeah, great stuff, Andre. Nathan, same to you, really. How have you looked at the last 7 days, at Newcastle? What have you made of the goings on?
Yeah, hi everyone. Yeah, I think it changes day by day, doesn't it? Every 2 days there's something new coming out. Like, who knows what's going to happen? Tomorrow there's going to be something new tomorrow, probably coming out as well. I think with the developments over the weekend with this new consortium, it's a bit. I'm taking it with a massive pinch of salt, really, because I think Chopra was absolutely full of the Saudi deal, wasn't he? Up until earlier this week, and he was doing like cryptic tweets and stuff as well, obviously. But I think we've got to be careful, because I think if you look online for information about this new consortium, there's very little to find out about them, really. All their accounts and social media accounts seem to have set up in the last couple of weeks. There's something online about them having the world's largest collection of private jets, but they don't have any Twitter posts. There's no Instagram posts or anything like that. So I think it's massively suspicious. It's just another. It's like Henry Maurice all over again, but they've got a slightly a bit more about them, I'd say. But then, yeah, it's the same sort of deal. I think with these guys, I don't think there's an awful lot. And the fact that I think it's that Chopra seems to have gone out and tried to source these people. I mean, you can't really compare it to the PIF, PCP, Rubens consortium, because obviously they've done the homework. They're well involved, and they've got an action plan. Should they come in and take over the club? Where if these guys have been sounded out by somebody to take over the club, then obviously they're not as massively invested. And I think it's a case of be careful what you wish for, again, for wishing for any old takeover, because I think it could be a case of someone looking to make a quick buck off the back of us, and then we're in the same position in another 13 years, wanting another sale to go through. So yeah, needs to be an air of caution.
Yeah, that's the big worry, isn't it? As you say, I think a lot of comments coming in. Tony Milner sums it up, I suppose. I'm starting to feel like the Saudis will feel insulted by the Premier League. I sense this might be the end of the road for PIF. I hope I'm wrong. Adam, coming to you now again. Just give us your indication of how you're feeling and what you feel about the last 7 days.
Yeah, sure. Thanks for having me on again, Steve. I think the short version of this is that Newcastle aren't going to be taken over anytime soon. Whether it's the PIF in negotiations with the Premier League or whether it's the Chopra consortium, I think that the reality that sort of struck me in the last 24 or 48 hours since that letter came out is really that the Premier League might have thought that would be the end of it for them, but in reality, it's sort of led to more questions than answers. But they've sort of bounced it back to Amanda Staveley and her group. I mean, I don't see any way that Amanda Staveley won't react to this. I think the most obvious question is, what standard are the Premier League holding PIF to if they haven't taken their assurances to be true, or to be fulfilling, or to be valid? The system that PIF went through in Saudi Arabia to get their Premier League the assurances they wanted wasn't accepted. So my question, if I was Mike Ashley or if I was Amanda Staveley, is you've rejected what we've given you so far. What is the standard that will meet your requirement? And if there isn't one, because the Premier League either don't want the deal to go through or the Premier League isn't comfortable with who they're negotiating with, then the Premier League needs to tell them that, because that will effectively end the bid, right? The bid won't be over until Amanda Staveley and her consortium truly understand what, if anything, they can provide to the Premier League that would move the ball forward. And I don't think they know that. I mean, Amanda made that clear 2 weeks ago now, or 2.5 weeks ago now, when she spoke to the folks on The Athletic, that she didn't know what the Premier League wanted, and that's why the deal stopped. If at some point the Premier League make it clear to them, either through Mike Ashley or through the media, they seem to love leaking things to Martin Samuel in the Daily Mail, make it clear so that we know the road path. And if there isn't a road path, then we can move on. And if we are going to move on from the PIF and Amanda Staveley and the Rubens, then we're going to have to face the fact that this is another season with Mike Ashley. If Michael Chopra and this new consortium are for real, then they're on day one of an extremely long process, right? It's already, the point's been made already today that PIF and that consortium spent months and months, beyond a year, prepping to be where they are today. And there's no way Michael Chopra and this consortium can fast track that process, right? They've got to start with negotiating with Mike Ashley, which is incredibly hard to do. Has been hard for anyone that's tried to, either with Newcastle or in his retail business. And if they are going to start negotiating with Mike Ashley, they're going to start by lowballing him, which is what the Chronicle made it sound like they did over the weekend or over the past week. And we're going to start that trail again, but that's going to take months and months. So again, my main concern, I made this point on your show a week or so ago, Steve, is my main concern is that we've got preseason starts tomorrow for the first team. We've got to backfill the squad. We've got to get Steve Bruce enough players to be competitive again. We've got to sign a striker. All these things we've been talking about for weeks and weeks now. So in many ways, the Premier League's letter, while it created more questions for the consortium, more questions for fans, I just sincerely hope we can all move forward on the pitch because the league starts in 3.5 weeks, and we are not good enough right now today to avoid a relegation fight. And that's my main concern as a fan, is how do we win enough games to stay in the division? Because again, all this takeover stuff, frankly, is just a bigger distraction than it needs to be right now. Sadly, right? We all wish we weren't in this position, but we've got to get some players on the pitch that are going to be good enough to keep Newcastle in the Premier League again.
Great points made there, Adam. And Spenny Mag, welcome, mate. Just want your views on the last week at Newcastle. I mean, how are you feeling after the roller coaster ride that we've all been on with this takeover? It's taken more twists and turns this week, and obviously the situation we find ourselves in now is that there appears to be another consortium interested via Michael Chopra, and the PIF bid seems to have stalled, but not completely halted. And what's been your take on it?
Well, after you announced the letter the MP got, I read it. I must have read it about 10 times because it contradicted itself. Really, it said it's like going to court and proving you're not guilty, and halfway through the court case, someone's saying, "Wait, you can to go for a real trial if you want to." Isn't it? It's that sort of thing. And
you're talking about the arbitration. Yeah.
Arbitration, yeah. It's just basically, we know what further forward, Steve, tell you the truth, than we were in February. We need to get Amanda out now and tell us what she's going to do. Is she going to go forward with the bid, or is the bid gone? Because we're all in limbo again, really. And that's for this new bidders. I've just read Shell's take on it, Red Rose Shell, and she said if they're going to be in the data room, that's the early stages of it, like a takeover, and that should even be released publicly, that they're in the data room. So I don't know what you think about it.
I get the impression there's been a bid made, but we're a million miles away. Adam's just put it across there, really. We're a million miles away from going down this route, and I think if PIF is going to eventually come to a halt, that bid does eventually cease to exist. I think then we'll hear from PCP and Amanda as to why it did stop. But my understanding is that deal is still very much alive, and compromise is the order of the day, and they're still trying to work it out. So we've just got to hope you know, I mean, it's been twists and turns over this last 3.5 months. I still think we've got another big twist as it is. But you're quite right what you say, Spenny Mag, that, you know, a lot of this needs to be done secretly. You've got to ask yourself why a consortium who's new kids on the block would suddenly go for the publicity angle first. You've also got to ask yourself, you know, Adam obviously states quite rightly there that, you know, it appears they've gone in a lot lower. You know, so we have Henry Morris, who hasn't appeared yet, who's bid 350 million. We have a deal on the table with PIF, who've agreed to pay an asking price, and Ashley's took away the 17 million deposit. So he's going to get more money out of that deal at this moment. Or you've got Michael Shopra's consortium, who's come in and allegedly offered between 280 and 285. But got to be honest, if I was coming in with a consortium, I'm not, by the way, so don't start spreading that rumor, but if I was coming in with a consortium, I certainly wouldn't be going in at 350 million. I would be going in at a lower price because let's face it, Newcastle United and every football club up and down the country is not turning over the revenue that it was, because we can't have fans in. Football at the moment is going through uncertain times, and you know we're going to see a lot of changes, I think. But let's move on from the takeover. Good to have you all on, and some great points made already. We're going to get a lot of questions coming in. Do try to get through these. Let's talk football players, and you know Adam's already mentioned you know potential signings, and we need them. I'll put something out about Chris Smalling. I've seen him already linked with a potential move. Of course, he's been on loan at Roma. You know, a lot of people saying that we don't need to look at that position, especially if our budget is going to be very low. We're being told that we could expect something between 30 and 35 million transfer budget in this window, which of course includes wages, we're led to believe. So Graham, you know, what would you like to see happen, you know, with Mike Ashley and Steve Bruce over the next couple of weeks? Do you think that Mike Ashley's going to be particularly interested or bothered? We're being linked with Hendricks. Frank Clark's made the point. See that Jeff Hendricks strongly linked to Newcastle. If the rumours are anything to go off, he should be revealed as a Newcastle player this week. He just wants to know what our thoughts are about that. But give us your thoughts on that, and in general, what you're expecting or what you're hoping for.
Well, pretty much along the same lines as what Adam was on about. It's terrifying, really. If it wasn't for the takeover plans, I hate to think what the next season at the moment looks like for us. The 35 million won't buy, as we all know, won't buy us anything. But to answer your question, Steve, I think, and Chris Smalling, yes, he's a good player. But I think that, okay, we can manage at the back with what we've got. But it's a striker that we need. I know it's old hat for me to say that, but it's desperately needed. A proper striker. I know 35 million won't get us the top one. And I've heard other people on your show saying that we need about 5 or 6 players, and then you start to dilute the pool, which means a striker, you're looking at 20 million, who you're realistically going to get for that. It's a real desperate situation looking forward to the season ahead. And also, if we start off badly, and they talk about the value of the club, and I know that it's good in that the takeover has got us all united. But once we start playing football again, there'll be differences of opinion about how Bruce is doing, how well the players are, and it can become a little fracture, shall we say? Whereas at the moment we're all united. But it's a desperate. I can really see, you know, Ashley. The thing that I often thought about Rafa was that he nearly calculated to the final point how much, if I spend this amount of money to get these players, this will guarantee me such and such, you know, position. I'm not quite sure that Steve Bruce has the same mentality or calculations in his head, but I think Ashley knows that he has to keep the club in the Premiership, otherwise it'll be devalued even more.
Yeah, it's good points, and I agree with you. We do need a striker, Graham. It's you know, desperate times at the moment up front, and you know, I know that they've all had a season under the belt now. The new players, Joe Linton, and you know, the likes of St. Maximin, etc. They all had different degrees of success, shall we say, last season. But you know, we do need somebody who can hit the ground running and put the ball in the back of the net. Andre, to you, mate, just about the players. I mean, again, Hendricks has been linked. Doesn't seem as if we're his first choice. If that is the budget, of course, we don't know that is the definite budget, but it seems to be a lot of people saying that it is. You know, but we are shopping in the bargain basement at the minute. You know, is a striker your priority still?
First of all, I really hope the budget is not 35 with the wages, because like if you consider that Joe Linton or Shelby are on like 80K per week, which is like the highest salary in Newcastle, like 35 million is basically 2 players. So I really hope that it's 35 million only for transfers, and from then on, Jeff Hendrick. I've seen him several times, and he has a great engine. He's a good midfield player and very solid, very stable. I think he averages like 2 goals per season. I think he has like 2 or 3 goals in every Premier League season that he's played in. But I don't think that the priority should be in midfield. I think the priority should be, as you said, a striker or a center forward. Someone to compete with Joe Linton for a starting place, or actually someone to start until, if ever, Joe Linton finds his feet. And for Smalling, I'm really surprised, because as everybody knows, Newcastle has like 6 center backs, probably the position where the team is very well covered. You have Cher, who's fighting for a place. Lejeune, who's a great player and who's back from hopefully back from his injuries. Fernandes, Lascelles, Paul Dummett's coming back. So basically, if you bring Chris Smalling, that makes it like seven people for 2 or 3 starting places, and you really have to let someone go. While Jeff Hendrick, I don't know, is he replacing Matty Longstaff, or is he replacing anyone who is supposed to leave? I know that many players, and I was reminded these days, many players have 1 year left on their contracts. A lot of players, around 10 players. So these players, either you move them out this summer or you lose them next summer for free. So it could be that I think Jeff Hendrick on a free is a smart acquisition for a squad player, but the priority should be definitely up front. And even if you need to spend 30-35 on one player, you need to spend it on someone who can score goals, because this year Shelby is the top scorer with 6 goals, which is equal to average in the history of the club for lowest goals per season for the top scorer. Really, the priority should be in attack. And I'm also worried what would happen with Saint-Maximin. He attracted a lot of attention, and I think he's on the radar of many clubs in England and in Europe. So it will be, you know how Ashley is. If someone comes with 50 million for Saint-Maximin, do you believe that Ashley will hold on to him?
Exactly. That's the big worry as well. Players leaving. Al-Walid, lots of people talking about different players. Watkins and Wilson being suggested there. Tom Davies is another one. But I mean, again, you know, it's a slow start of the transfer window for everybody. I think most teams will be very cautious about what they're going to do. I think even the teams coming up will be cautious, because it's all about their financial situations. They don't really know whether they're going to allow fans back in or anything. And it's, all big gambles, I think, at the moment. What's your take on players coming in?
I think Newcastle management now, I think they are seem like looking for who's available more than what they really need. I agree with our friend Martin from last broadcast. He says numbers doesn't lie, and I agree with him regarding this point. I did some analytical regarding the statistic and the Newcastle performance this season. I found some interesting points regarding forward player in the game. The percentage, there are 3 shots on target per game, and the percentage of this shot to be a goal is 0.7. So definitely, I agree with you. We need a striker with Guile. Guile can't save us every time with Alan Saint-Maximin. They need a striker as well. Also, the ball position percentage is, I think, the lowest in the Premier League teams. So we need also a player who can keep the ball for a little longer, I believe.
Okay, Nathan, come to you, mate. A lot of people talking about Chris Wood. Is that somebody you would take? And what about Chris Smalling? Been linked today as a potential. Again, it's not a centre forward. I've got to be honest. Any players coming in who've had his kind of experience would be beneficial to me. But again, it depends on who's going out.
Yeah, I think so. I heard about Callum Wilson today as well. But that was talk of Dwight Gale going out and Matt Ritchie leaving as well. But obviously, if I guess from the conversations that we're having and the budget that we're working to, we're looking at having Dwight Gale plus somebody else up front next season, aren't we? So if we get rid of Gale to bring Wilson in, then we still need another striker as well. I'm actually I live in Burnley myself, so I've seen quite a lot of Jeff Hendrick and Chris Wood. For Hendrick, I think he's. I don't think we could get away with a player like that in our team because we've got Shelby who doesn't do an awful lot of running. Hendrick is much similar to him. He doesn't do a lot of running either, and he'll look to pass the ball about. But if anything, he's nowhere near as good a passer as Shelby. I heard about Tom Davies mentioned from Everton for 12 million. That could seem like a decent deal. I think he'd give us a bit of something different. He's got a lot of sort of dynamism about him. He gets about the pitch a bit more than the players that we've got in centre midfield, certainly. Anyway, Chris Wood is a big lad. Obviously, he's a threat up front. I think he works well in Burnley's team because they get the ball down the wings and lump it in the box and they get some level of success with that. But I mean, from last season, how we played, we didn't really get it into the box that much. But that's because we had Joe Linton to aim for. So I guess it wasn't a great idea. But I think it's I think from wherever we're at, it's we definitely need another striker. I would like Callum Wilson, but then if we're losing Gale for him as well, then we do need another one in as well. And for the money that we're talking about, we're not going to get a top class centre forward, for that much. I'd look at Troy Deeney as well, honestly. If I don't know if he's staying at Watford, if he's talking of going elsewhere, but he could be available. He's had his injuries and stuff, but he might be another good option for us. We need another two in though. We need another two up front, don't we? Definitely. I think for centre halves, I think we're good. I don't know about Chris Smalling. We've seen him be like calamitous at times, haven't we, in the Premier League? I'm sure he's had a bit of a better run over there in Roma, but I don't think he'll have been put under anywhere near as much of the pressure as he has been week in, week out in the Premier League. So I think honestly we're quite solid at centre half, and I think I'd like to get Willems back in as well. I think he'd be a really good. Of all the loan signings that we've had last season, I think he sort of made the best impression on me personally. Anyway, so yeah, I think that's where we're at.
Yeah, good stuff, Nathan. Adam, a lot of support for Richie. A lot of people want him to stay. A lot of people, wouldn't like to see him made to leave the club. He is a grafter, of course. Dwight Gale, had a great end to the season. A lot of people questioning whether is he worth keeping a hold of? Will he stay fit? Chris Wood, of course, we could have had him when Rafa was manager, but unfortunately, Rafa couldn't trust the owner to give him any money, and he was still trying to get rid of Mitrovic at the time, and he was on his way to Newcastle potentially, but obviously didn't come. But again, it's another one who would give you a different option up front. But what's your view on incomings and outgoings?
Well, the club's got to get busy, haven't they? I mean, if the budget is 30 to 35 million, including wages and signing on fees and agent fees, which I believe it is, because that's how Ashley always does his budgets with the club, then they shouldn't spend $1 or £1 of that, until they've signed a striker, right? I don't care if the striker costs 30 million. I made the point on this show with you last week, Steve, that until you have a striker who's going to get you more than 10, 12, 13 goals, you may as well not bother showing up. So I don't care if they spend the entire budget on a striker, as long as they get it right this time, unlike obviously they did with Joe Linton. Part of the problem that Newcastle have with all these centre-backs, and I agree we've got lots of quality centre-backs at the club, is that we can't keep 2 or 3 of them fit at any time. So when the players show up tomorrow, Lascelles isn't going to be fit, Shah isn't going to be fit, Lejeune won't have played in 4 or 5 months, Dummett won't have played in more than 6 months, Clark won't have played in more than 6 months. And Clark and Dummett and Lejeune, for their entire careers, basically at Newcastle, they've spent at least half the season injured. So while we have got great depth at centre back, what we don't have is a great amount of players that stay fit every season. So that's a massive problem. And the same goes in the middle of the park. So with people talking about Jeff Hendrick and maybe Tom Davis, I think the reason that Bruce wants to sign a centre midfielder or two is that we probably lost Matty Longstaff. So our centre midfielders right now are Hayden Shelby and Sean Longstaff, who again, between the three of them, have never completed a season without getting hurt or injured. So Isaac Hayden's got 1 year left on his contract. I don't know why the club haven't tried to re-sign him. Hopefully they have, and they're just sort of working through that. He's by far our most consistent performer when he's fit and playing, particularly in the middle. So they've got to re-sign him, but I think maybe getting Hendricks on a 3 or 4 year deal and maybe looking at Tom Davis too is to protect them in the middle of the park there from getting injuries, but also the potential for Isaac Hayden to be leaving at the end of this season. The other big problem that Newcastle have, and I think someone's mentioned it in the comments, is that we've got to register 25 players. We're already at 25 with the loan signings we had. I know they've all gone back, but we've got to re-register Kieran Clark. We've got to re-register Paul Dummett. We've also got to register Dan Barlaser if he's going to stay at the club and play, which I hope he does because he's got a great deal of potential. If Kel Watts is going to stay at the club and be a centre-back, they've got to register him as well. Obviously, they've got to make decisions with the youth team because Elias Sorensen would have to be registered if he's not going to go out on loan. I suspect he probably will. But yeah, they've got to make a lot of decisions. But I really just feel, Steve, that until they sign a striker, they may as well not spend any of that budget anywhere else. You know, they've got free players they can get. I don't know why they haven't gone and got Ryan Fraser yet. I think he would be just an absolutely perfect position for them. He can play both wings. He can play number 10. We've got to get someone like that back in the squad. And then they've also got to make really, really good use of their 2 Premier League loan signings. They've really got to get those perfect, whether it's Harry Wilson from Liverpool or the other young lad from Liverpool that plays in the centre of midfield, or someone from the Chelsea ranks. They've got to use those perfectly, and they've really got to be players that they don't have to register because, again, their squad is too big. And to get rid of all that dead wood in the next 3 or 4 weeks, I think we've got 50 days till the window closes now. The likes of Mutu and Atsu and Murphy, a handful of others as well. They've got 3 right backs, right? They can't have 3 right backs in a 25-man squad, so they've got to get rid of one of those right backs. So, yeah, you've got 50 days, but you've got to move probably 4 or 5 players out if you're going to be, really replacing them in the next 50 days. You've got to move quick. And again, just to make the point for the 50th time, until you've got a striker, you've really got no team at all. Yeah,
well said. Spenny Mag, what's your take on incomings and outgoings? Is there anybody you'd really like to see at the club, and who would you be prepared to let go?
Right, end of the day, goals win games. So we need a goal scorer. Simple as. When you look back in the history of Newcastle before Shearer came along, all these strikers we got were all from lower divisions. Andy Cole was Bristol Rovers. All the rest would be Bristol City or Bristol Rovers, I can't remember now. All from lower league and brought them in. Supermark, all of them. Want they really? We need to be looking at our scouting system. Because obviously the scouting system didn't work out in the season before when we got Joe Linton, 40 million. Something's gone wrong heavily there. Getting a person like that to be our main striker and cost us 40 million quid, which is our budget now. I would have Williams back as well when he's not injured either, because I think he'd give 100% when he was at Newcastle then, and he had the fans as well.
Yeah, you're right, 100% right, mate.
Half like Steve. I think we just need full backs. 2 full backs for me and 2 strikers, and maybe in the attack midfield where we're all right with Max and Almiron. We could even do with Alway with that top on. He looks brilliant with that top on, man, doesn't he? Looks like
looks like a player. Looks like a player. Yeah, I think the other problem we've got, just backing up what most of you are saying, is we need to act quickly. Two things that struck out from your comments, guys, was that Lee Charnley isn't the quickest at sealing deals. I remember when Rafa was there, Rafa's backroom staff, he used to say to us that essentially he would do 1 deal at a time. Which of course means essentially that he's going to miss out on deals if that's the way that he's doing it, which seemed a bit bizarre. He wasn't really coming from a football background, Charnley, although he's been there a long time. He didn't have the same experience as, say, Russell Cushion, who was at the club for many years doing exactly the same kind of job. So maybe that has part to do with it. I think my other concern is, and I know Adam was mentioning the likes of Kel Watson, for example. Once Newcastle United were safe last season, there seemed to be a reluctance by Steve Bruce to actually play young players, give them that opportunity to blood themselves and get in. So, Graham, I'll come to you, mate. We have got a crop of youngsters at the club. Would you have liked to have seen them given a chance? Graham, would you like to have seen the youngsters get a chance? Yeah, would you like to have seen the youngsters get a chance at the club?
Yes, very much so, yeah. Also about the, I was surprised he didn't give, I know we might be running out of hope, but I thought Muto might have featured somewhere. I mean, I don't see what the point is with keeping him. If he's not, you know, he may not have reached our expectations much at all, but he seemed to be included in the squad a lot, but never actually got on the pitch at all. But I hadn't been aware of it was useful to be reminded about the squad situation. I'd forgotten about that before we can get any players, we're going to have to offload some. That's a scary situation to be in.
Yeah, no, it is, and I mean, I think you know, giving the young players a chance once we were safe, I think there was a missed opportunity there, and you know, he's talking about buying British, Andre. I saw somebody make a comment there a little bit earlier saying, you know, a lot of them are overpriced and overrated, the British footballers. What's your view on that, Andre? Would you take? Is there any British British players that would stand out, or do you think it's best shopping in the foreign markets?
Well, with the introduction of the domestic players law, for sure it put pressure on this one, and for sure the prices of the British players escalated. And you know, this summer will be different though, because of the pandemic and the economic crisis that's coming, and it's not coming, it's already here. So I suspect that this summer is going to be very different in terms of transfers to what we are used to in the previous years. But definitely the British players have been really overpriced in the past 7-8 years. And some of the price tags have been really crazy, and there are so many examples. But and I don't think Newcastle is in a position really to currently attract the top British talent. Unfortunately, you know, unlike 1996 and breaking the world record, buying a local player and who's also from Newcastle. Right now, Newcastle cannot really go for the top talent in England, or you need a great scout system, and you really have to attract them at the age of 16, 17, 18, or in the lower division. But you have to have really an eye for a talent. The thing is that you know, I'm not sure on who does the transfers in Newcastle. I know Steve Harrison is the main guy right now. I know for sure that Joe Linton and Alan Saint-Maximin were not Steve Bruce transfers last summer, because he was on the job after they were already acquired. I don't know how much of a say Steve Bruce has in the transfers right now. This was one of Rafa's, you know, strong points, and that he was so powerful and he wanted full control over transfer dealings. But I'm not sure right now who's doing the dealings in Newcastle, who does the scouting, who has the final say on transfers. But I would love for Newcastle to pick a top British talent and to have great local players. But I don't think that they're in a position to right now. I still think that the international market is where they can pick a player like Saint-Maximin for 17 million, or unlike Joelinton, you know, 40 million for Joelinton. We discussed the previous time. It's really a disaster, this transfer, and we don't know if. Let's give him a chance. Of course, he has another year, let's say, to settle down and to impress. But I don't think that any of us saw anything in him like speed, first touch, technique, shot. He doesn't seem to have anything of these. Yeah, he doesn't seem to be a natural center forward. He doesn't seem to be a natural wing player. He doesn't seem to be a natural playmaker. So where exactly is his position? And the club now cannot really offload him. They cannot take more than 5-10 million for him. So either they take the hurt of 30 million in transfer, or they give him another chance this season. And I fear that we might rely on Joe Linton for this season as well. And let's hope that Dwight Gale is also fit, because Steve Bruce seems to like him and to give him a chance, especially towards the end of the season.
Well, you're getting asked a couple of questions. Is there any new Berbatovs or Stoichkovs out there that you could suggest?
You know that Berbatov, he used to be a great fan of Shearer. So actually, whenever the guy likes to comment on English football in Bulgaria, and usually he's thought of as a Newcastle United fan. I think he's more like a Shearer's fan, but he has this picture as a 19-year-old with the Newcastle United top. And sometimes the press, you know, post this image of him, and they say this the famous Newcastle fan Dimitar Berbatov. I wouldn't say that Bulgaria is the market that Newcastle should be looking at, but Eastern Europe in general, like the Russian Premier League, there are some great players there. Of course, they are already spotted by the top Italian, top German teams, and you might see some transfers this summer. But there are great players in Eastern Europe still cheaper than, let's say, buying a guy from Chelsea or Man City or a British player.
Yeah, Al-Walid, lots of people talking about, British players are too expensive and they're underrated. What's your view from Saudi?
Regarding the strikers in general?
Yeah, just in general,
Yeah.
British players in general. I mean, you watch the Premier, you've watched the Premier League. You've seen the players. I think a lot of the reason that the Premier League has become the biggest, league in the world, the most popular, is because of the foreign imports. But people saying Steve Bruce is allegedly saying that he wants to buy British. Well, it doesn't seem to have gone down well amongst the fan base.
Actually, it's a global problem. The strikers are very rare these days. We saw last night Manchester City. They only have Jesus, and he didn't do what we expected. We remember also Jimmy Vardy. He was only 24 years old, and he was playing some in 4th division or 5th division, I believe. So I think if there is a good scouting, maybe we can get someone like Jimmy Vardy in these divisions. But for now, maybe, I don't know, maybe you will not agree with me with this name I will say now. But Jesse Lingard, I think he can, the price, maybe 35 can get Jesse Lingard, I'm not sure.
Okay, hopefully you're right. Somebody like that would be fantastic. Nathan, what's your take on all of this?
I think the unfortunate problem that we're in is that with the takeover that's been going on in the background, we've been in a position now where our scouting team have been pretty much just out of action, haven't they? Because the owners have kind of had one foot out the door from January, February time this year. So we're in a position now where we're in the transfer market, and anything we do is going to be massively reactionary instead of any sort of forward planning. The problem is with bringing that sort of younger players through is that we've seen that Bruce doesn't really know how to manage their time and to manage their development. He's not really been. He's had opportunities to bring players through, like we talked about in the last few games of the season, but he's not really brought them into the team. The situation with Matty Longstaff, it seemed like a perfect opportunity to get him playing. I mean, we could be in a different situation now with his contract if he'd have put Matty Longstaff in the team instead of Ben Taleb, a lad that's come through the ranks. He'd have put him into the team, found a formation that fits around him, and it would have given him some confidence to stay possibly, and it may have made him more likely to stay. So I think, like, in terms of picking up players from Europe, we won't have done any proper scouting on the ones that we'd be looking at to get. Like I said, because of the situation of the takeover and everything that's been rumbling on in the background. You look at players like Kraft, who they've brought through. They've done nothing, have they? Players like him have just been, they're terrible when you see them. I'd be looking at now. Quite a few players from Brentford caught my eye in the playoffs. I thought Ollie Watkins and Ben Rama were fantastic. I'd much rather spend the bulk of our transfer kitty on getting players like those into the team, because they look great last season. I think there's any doubt that players like that could do a job in the Premier League, and would be better off for having players like that in the side. I would think. Yeah,
Adam, same question to you, mate, just about the English players, and got a laugh at Katie's point there. She says Bruce just wants full English because he likes the bacon. Good point, Katie. But yeah, Adam, what's your views?
Yeah, I mean, there's no doubt that young English talent is at a premium across the country. So, if you've got a really good young English talent in your squad or coming through the ranks, then you can't afford to let him go. We saw that last summer with Sean Longstaff. Ironically, Man United wanted to give us 30 to 40 million. I think in some ways we'd bite their hand off for that now. Sad to say, as bad as his year was, but it just goes to show that if you've got a good young English talent, you want to hold on to them, and you need to get as much money as you can for them. Andy Carroll being the most obvious example at Newcastle, going for 35 million, which again, just insane money at the time. But I think, sort of going back to a couple of the points that have been made there by the group is that Newcastle last summer had 3 weeks to prepare with Steve Bruce. We came in, I think 2.5 weeks. I think the squad was mostly out in China at the time. So they had done their research on St. Maximum. They almost signed him in January, I think. And they had done their research on Joe Linton, which is pretty scary when you think about the time and money that went into signing Joe Linton and how badly they missed on that. I think a great deal of thought needs to go into who was involved in that conversation. If it was Steve Nixon and Lee Charnley, then you've got to question what they did there. I think they signed him to a 5 or 6 year contract. So they probably committed about £60 million to that guy when you think about his wages and his transfer fee. So they can't afford to make that mistake again. I do want to just quickly talk about the 30 to 35 million. I don't follow other clubs obviously as closely as I follow our club, but I would bet the clubs that we're going to be competing with next season, you take that bottom sort of 8 or 9 teams, sadly, look at what they're going to spend in this window. And I bet 35 million to 40 million is close to the top of what those teams will spend. Steve, you made the point earlier that because of COVID and the TV revenue and the fan revenue that won't be there for clubs, people are going to be very, very careful in this window. And again, if Newcastle do strike early with a striker, sorry for the pun, that will really set the standard for them as a club going forward in this window. But I think Nathan made the point about Ollie Watkins and Barami, and there are some other really good Championship players. My guess is because they've been so hyped up going into this transfer window that those will be the types of deals that get done right at the end of the window. When they've started playing in the Championship and Premier League clubs will start scouting again and the rumour mill will start and the price will go up. And I just don't think Newcastle can afford to A, wait that long, but B, spend money on players that aren't proven. I think it's very clear by the players we're being linked with at the moment that Bruce can only really afford to buy players that are proven Premier League players or are proven to score goals at the top level or perform well at the top level. Sadly, we can't take a risk on not knowing if someone's going to be very good. Emil Krafth is the obvious example of that, right? That was a completely reactionary signing to Yedlin being injured and only having Manquillo to backfill that position. They went and just signed the first available right back they could find, who had just been signed by his current club after being on loan. They tripled what the club had just paid for him that summer, literally that summer. So we can't afford to do that. We can't afford to gamble. I really hope that when they met in January of this year and started planning for the transfer window, as they apparently have done, if you listen to the Chronicle and folks like that, even with a £70 million budget, now with a £30 million budget, hopefully they've got a priority list of 2 or 3 people. I've seen a number of people on the chat function talking about Alfredo Morelos from Rangers, who I talked about last time. I think he's available for around 20 million. I would be sending that offer in right now. He fits for Newcastle on so many levels. He's 24, just turned 24. He has almost a goal every 2 game ratio for Rangers in about 100 games. He's very close to 50 goals. I realize that the Scottish Premier League is not the Premier League, but it's probably about the standard that Newcastle are going to be playing at next season in the bottom half of the Premier League. So if he is available for 20 million, and if we can throw Daryl Murphy in, as someone made the comment, not Daryl Murphy, Jacob Murphy. Sorry.
Jacob Murphy. Yeah, there's too many Murphys.
Yeah, if we can get him for 20 million and get rid of Murphy, that would sort of be the perfect transfer for us. I know that the Rangers are interested in Murphy. So anyway, I made the point earlier. Newcastle have to be very smart. They can't take a lot of risks, and they do need to move very soon.
Yeah, Spenny Mag. Do we buy British? Do you think it's a good idea? Would you agree with Adam? Would you go and get Morelos from Rangers?
I don't know. Unfortunately, anybody would do, but I would go for that QPR lad, the young lad, the players up front.
Yeah,
him and Max would be sensational up front.
Yes, yeah.
And I will go with that lad at Celtic. Is it Adwada who scored a hat-trick the other week?
Correct. Yes.
One choice. And Batsui's up for grabs at Chelsea as well. And he'll be a cracking signing as well.
Yeah, I think that's a great shout. I think he's been linked before. The Chronicle tonight is full of online. Sorry, is full of Chris Wood as a potential. Hendricks is almost over the line according to reports. So we'll watch all of that with process. We're coming down to the.
Just say this.
Go on, Spenny Mag. Yeah, go on.
Interesting stuff I read this morning on Twitter. There's 12 players out of contract next season. Newcastle, first team players.
Yeah, that's a big worry as well. Yeah, that's a big worry. Not having players tied down, it is a concern. We'll go around the table. One last point, so we'll probably just hit over the hour today, guys. And just getting back to the takeover situation, we've seen obviously the Football Supporters Association will be meeting with the Newcastle United Supporters Trust. It's been quite obvious, and I've noticed a couple of comments coming in on the chat about the trust. People wanting to know what that meeting's all about, etc. Essentially, it's the trust would have met with the Football Supporters Association anyway, but they're actually putting out a few questions on behalf of the supporters to the Premier League about the current situation. So just with that in mind, Graham, Newcastle United Supporters Trust, we've spoken with other fans on the show about it. Is it something that you're a member of? You've admitted you're a slightly older supporter. Is it something that you've joined? Is it something that you agree with? Is it something you would push? And are you pleased to see that Amanda Staveley has reached out during the last few weeks to the trust and try to get them on board with what she wants to do?
Yeah, I'm a member of the of NUFC, and I think the more that can join the campaign, the better, really, and to show that what we all are, which is sort of united about it. That's really the way that I see it.
Yeah, no, that's good. That's good. I mean, I was interested. Most of the other lads had asked this question before, so it was interesting to hear. Alwaleed, I want to come to you. A couple of questions from people with regard to to PIF, and a lot of people saying, do you think PIF would get embroiled in legal action? If it was necessary. Do you think that's something that you could see happening, or do you think they would just walk away? And it's not putting you on the spot. I'm just saying, would they actually? With your experience, do you think PIF would look at legal action if they felt it was something they could win?
I don't think the Saudi league group will go without a fight until the end. I want to say something quick. Even if the takeover happen, let's say tonight, I am still blaming the Premier League for this wasted time. Now the most suffer one is Newcastle, especially with this trying to get on the signing before the season start. The good point, the positive point I found Friday when we were waiting something to hear before the Richard Master letter, Merdad, Amanda Staveley husband, says something regarding a tweet. There were a song. So I thought the song is something not related, but when I see the hashtag NUFC takeover, I said to myself, let's go dig with this song. I tried to look into the lyrics. I found the lyrics is positive, so it's a
Rick
positive
Astley.
thing to hear about it.
The Rick Astley song, Never Gonna Give You Up. Spenny's obviously got it on in the background.
Yeah, I like the part it says, inside we both know what's been going on. We know the game and we are gonna play it. So they're still fighting for that.
Yeah, that's good, mate. That's a positive way of looking at it, Andre. I mean, yeah, it's been interesting to watch, the social media interaction between Amanda's husband and Jamie Rubin. They've liked a lot of tweets. They've interacted. But I thought some people thought it was, a little bit childish, but I think most Newcastle fans took it in the right way. They personally felt that was showing that they're still involved, they're still interested, and they're still fighting to try and take the club over, Andre.
Yeah, and actually these guys have communicated more with the fan base than Ashley has done for the past 13 years. So for sure it's a good PR step from their part. And actually they give all the right messages, and they haven't done anything wrong actually on the communication part. As far as your previous question on the trust, I am a member of the trust. I joined last summer. I did it more of a moral support to the cause, because Newcastle doesn't have many organized fan groups, and this one seems to be the biggest and, let's say, the most vocal one. And anyhow, the one that reached out internationally for members. And I joined for the last year. There was this option for a lifetime membership. I think it cost like something like the 10-15 pounds. So I joined there. Honestly, I'm curious how they will develop, and I like that they put pressure in the system in the past 3-4 weeks. Like they seem very well balanced, and I like the chairman guy who's very well spoken. And I'm looking forward to their media, Alex Hurst, and I'm looking forward to their meeting with the league. I hope they ask the right questions, the ones that we are discussing now. Like why did the Premier League didn't approve? Why were they opposing the deal from the go? And I think they're in a position to ask the right question. And in general, I think Newcastle needs organization of the fans, and I think it can only help. It's the voice of the fans, especially in the Mike Ashley regime, where you see that there's no communication from the club. There's nothing basically. I told you that. Internationally, like for instance, if you are from Bulgaria and you want to apply for a ticket or you want to organize a game, you cannot access. If you want to have a fan club in Bulgaria and, let's say, communicate with the club, basically they reply, we don't work with fan clubs from abroad. And Newcastle is very far behind from other clubs. Arsenal have 2,000 fans in Bulgaria who pay like 50 pounds per year in order to be members of the club. And it's money that goes into the club, and it's there is communication, and you can work with these people and you can make a huge business out of it. And currently Newcastle is not there. So Newcastle for sure needs organized fan group.
Yeah, Nathan, what would you like to see the trust asking the Premier League when they meet on Wednesday?
Yeah, I think they've got it right in terms of they're asking for further clarity on the ins and outs of the processes, and I think it's fair to comment that like a lot of the content of the letter from Richard Masters was highlighted in, I think it was the Daily Mail the day before or earlier that day. The entirety of that letter pretty much was detailed in a news report the day before. So that's obviously a concern, something we need to get to the bottom of. What I'd like the trust to do, and what in terms of the action going forward, is obviously they've got links with the consortium now. They've had an ongoing dialogue with Amanda, and I think Alex has talked about that on occasion. What I'd like them to do now is I'd like them to speak to the consortium and to give us fans some indication of what they're looking to do at this moment in time. Because at this moment in time, we're as fans, we're kind of collateral, and we're sitting in the middle of this, and we're getting sort of, the consortium asked us to jump in terms of getting on board on the social media stuff and protesting. We've said, yeah, how high, and we're doing that, and we've been doing that for the past couple of weeks, but we're kind of still in the dark. And although the Premier League aren't going to comment too much because they've not been given a decision to make effectively by the consortium pulling out, but we need to know now what the consortium are doing. Are they obviously they probably can't talk with a great deal of clarity about what they're actually doing in terms of, but we need to know that they're still there, they're still committed. And obviously we've talked about the social media stuff that Mehrdad and Jamie Rubin have been doing, but I just love them to give us something a bit more concrete, so we don't have to sort of worry all the time, because it's one thing after another, isn't it? It's going on now, and we've lived and breathed this for the last sort of couple of years, haven't we? Really, and we're all I'm sure I could speak for everyone. We're all sick to the back teeth of it now. So yeah, I'd like the trust to push that issue with the consortium and just get a confirmed nod to say yeah we're still here and we're still actively working through something or not, and then we can, because otherwise I feel like I don't want us as fans to be made a fool out of. We've done all this sort of cheerleading from the sides for the consortium, and if they're if they've actually withheld information, if they've actually refused to cooperate with the process, and if they've actually they've got no interest in taking it forward, we're sort of blindly cheerleading for them. And I'd like a bit more clarity on that, I think, from the trust.
Great honesty from you, Nathan. Adam, a bit more clarity is what Nathan's asking for. I mean, I think it is a bit strange, and bearing in mind, I've spoken to both parties over the course of the last 17, 18 weeks, people on both sides of the fence, and obviously NDAs were meaning that nobody could comment. Now we seem to be going through a phase where it's an open forum, and everyone's using their particular journalistic contacts to get the message out. Is Nathan right? Would you like to see something a little bit more concrete coming out at some point?
Yeah, I mean, I think I made the point in sort of my opening remarks there that the next move is the consortiums now, right? And now it's a public forum that we're all existing in. So PIF pulled out to draw out the Premier League, and it worked. It was a very aggressive tactic, but it worked. The Premier League had to make clear a few things about the process that we now all know that we didn't know before. But they've bounced the ball back to the consortium, and I don't think for a minute that we won't see something from them, whether it's through the media or through another official announcement or statement in the next 2 or 3 days, because the Premier League effectively made it sound like it was PIF's fault that the takeover didn't move forward, despite the long delays, despite the lack of communication. So I don't hesitate to say that we'll hear something from PIF or from Amanda Staveley through George Colkin or through maybe even the Trust in the next 2 or 3 days, probably before the Premier League goes to the meeting with the Trust and with the other supporters groups on Wednesday. So I think we're in for a really sort of frantic 2 or 3 more days. But to Nathan's point, expertly made again, is that we need to know some sort of clarity from the consortium now. If they're not in it to sort of make any other moves, if they cannot reach what the Premier League is asking them to do, if they cannot provide for them what they wanted, then that's the end of it. And if that is the end of it, then we sort of need to know in the next 2 or 3 days, so that not only can the fans move on, but the club can move on, Steve Bruce can move on, and so on. I did just see that while folks were talking there that Newcastle signed Freddie Woodman to a brand new 3-year contract, effectively a 4-year contract, which is great. It's exactly what they needed to do. They should have done it last year. I don't know what took them the extra year to do that. We've basically covered now for Dubravka going in the next 2 or 3 years when he's getting into his mid-30s now. So delighted about that. Hopefully it's the first of several players that sign new contracts, as the other folks made the point of saying. So yeah, it's going to be an interesting couple of days, Steve. I know that lots of it is out in the public domain now. I do want to make just one last point about the newer consortium, Chopra, coming through, that some other folks made. That consortium worries me a little bit, the fact that they went so public so quickly. My only guess may be that it's a tactic to sort of fast track the process, is to get it out in the public domain early, so that it creates an atmosphere where either the club or maybe even the Premier League need to move quickly on it. That doesn't tend to work well with Ashley ever when people do that. So I'd be very surprised if that moves forward. If nothing else, though, it might have pushed Amanda Staveley's consortium to sort of act even quicker than they were planning on acting. But until the Premier League makes it clear to them what is the next step, right? What is going to be acceptable? I don't see any way that Amanda Staveley can sort of break the gridlock, or the consortium can break the gridlock without it being made clear by the Premier League. And that will happen in a closed door meeting, right? That won't be public. The Premier League will have to go to Mike Ashley and the club and say, this is what is going to be acceptable. This is what we're going to be willing to consider to move forward without arbitration, because that's just bullshit, frankly. Sorry for the language, given the amount of time that would take. So we'll see. But yeah, very, very interesting few days ahead of us. I think Wednesday will be a big day. The Trust hopefully gets their opportunity to speak directly to the Premier League. And as I think Andre made the point, Alex has been fantastic for fans across the world, not just in the Northeast. I fully support what the Trust is doing. I hope everyone takes the time to join them in the next few days. But yeah, a membership like that is very, very strong. And candidly, it's the best way forward for fans, because they are recognized by the Premier League and by the club, held accountable to both of those bodies. So that's a very, very promising place to sort of put our energy right now. And hopefully something good is coming around the corner. But, my final point is we've got to sign some players, and we've got to do it soon.
Yeah, good points. Spenny Mag, we'll finish off with you, mate. Yeah, just the Supporters Trust obviously had that meeting on Wednesday with the Premier League. What would you like to see the mask on the fans' behalf?
Wait, I've got the email off them, because obviously I'm a member still of them. And the points they're going to make on the agenda, I really think it's good what they're going to do. Like the first one, they're going to ask why a newspaper report before it was released by the MP, then it was in the newspaper before the MP put it on Twitter or whatever she did first. How the hell did they know before her? And the other one is where the deal is, which they're going to go in, and the Premier League have accepted the need to know about the takeover. That is going to be discussed at this meeting on Wednesday. I mean, worries about them. when in the past when they said they got a letter off Richard Masters and they wouldn't publish what he said. I thought we needed to know that as members. But now what they're doing now, I think I agree with what they're doing. I think they're doing it for the benefit for us, finally.
Yeah, good stuff. Well, listen, lads, the clock has beaten us. We've gone into extra time. Been a fantastic hour or so's chat with you, the Newcastle United fans from around the world. I'm sure we'll get you back on again very soon. Graham, thanks for coming on and making your debut as well. Absolute pleasure to have you on today, mate.
Thank you very much. Enjoyed it.
Great stuff. Tomorrow night, guys, back with the girls, 6 p.m. We've got ladies' night, so please tune in and give this video a like and a share. But for now, I've been Steve Wraith. Good night. God bless.